Research is when you start gathering and analyzing information about it. The research analysis has to go hand in hand with the organization. So ultimately you might have to change your research according to the need of the situation. So Honda, when they came up with their brilliant product called as Activa, they understood that they were going to be the market leaders in the coming years. Research is not an individual or an intellectual mind process. Good morning and welcome to the first session in Unit 2 in Business Research Methods, where we are going to speak about a very interesting topic called as the research design. Now, what is this research design all about? So let's go further and try to understand the research design altogether. Now, the common definition that we talk about the research is when you start gathering and analyzing information about it. But then the business research itself has got its own methods in way how you start exploring information, how you start looking at it, and how you start rebuilding the entire exercise. So having a common set of objectives in research, the next step would be to develop a research design which suits the best in terms of the research objectives. Now, we need to understand at this juncture that the most common problem in most of the industries is that what do we need to do next? Every industry, every organization in this world knows about the factor that they have a problem. They do not know how to come out of the problem because the next step is not being validated. The next process is not known to them. They know that they have to maintain the quality, they know that they have to satisfy the customers, they also know how to get the top line and the bottom line numbers, but they do not know about this factor, how to come in terms of the next step, the next process altogether. So that's why I would always say at that juncture that you need a research. You need to start researching the factors of how to build in a better process, a better system altogether. Now, since you have a common objective in mind, you know that this is what we exactly need to do in the coming 5 or 10 or 20 years. Let's start getting into a research methodology. Let's design a research process that could start making you reach the goals year after year. Now, the other thing is that since this is an ongoing research basis, the methodology and the sampling procedure that needs to be selected has to be specified. That's very important here. Now, when you look at companies like Hindustan Lever Limited or Johnson & Johnson, these companies have been into the presence of the market for many long years. People know them as the age-old companies of this earth, of this century altogether. But then these companies have to do something continuously. They have to research something about their products and they have to come with a new idea so that they are able to survive in the market. It is not that they have come up with one product and they can keep selling that product for hundreds of years. They need to innovate, they need to sustain, they need to go back and tell in the market that they have the capacity, they have the capability in terms of rebuilding an organization again and again. And that's where research methodology, the research design comes into place. Now, the first thing is that after doing all this, we are going to lay out the structure and sequence of the overall project. So somewhere down the lane, we are going to provide a complete roadmap to the organization saying that how you are going to take the research forward and how this research is going to turn out to be a golden key of success for you. Now, we need to understand the end point of a research, the result of a research is all about getting in that predictive factor that could turn around your organization. Research does not need to be static. Research does not need to be spelling numbers. Research does not need to be one that is consist of complex formulas. Research needs to be a simple laid out guideline that can take the organization to the next level as far as possible. So that's why I would always say that the research design, the research analysis has to go hand in hand with the organization. So the first thing I'm going to do here is that the research design, once it is implemented and the implementation phase starts going into position, I'm going to go with the data gathering. I'm going to make this research live with the data getting connected at each and every point. So every time when I collect the data, when I implement this research, I see that I'm able to get productive results. I don't want to have a system that is only going to continue in terms of the research methodology, following those theoretical steps. I want to have a research that is well connected. I want to have a research that will go further and tell the company where exactly we have collected the data, where exactly we have implemented the design, and what is the outcome of the process. Now after that, the data collection, manipulation, analysis, at last the data is interpreted and we know the result. Now most of the companies are interested in results these days, and that's what the business always talks to you. But then before going to the result stage, let us also try to understand this factor. Results can be generated only when we know the reasons. If we don't know the reasons, results cannot be generated. So business research is an ideal step, is a methodology, it's an ideology which I would like to say, which is going to first analyze the reasons behind the failures and success of the business, and then start implementing a method so that we can reach success in a short while. Moving further, the importance of research design. The first thing, it's an important part of research that serves as a roadmap, letting you know the position where you stand and once you have completed the research. Now, let me make you understand this factor very clearly here. Moment Honda started coming up with a two-wheeler in India, that too in an auto gear mode, that means to say a gearless kind of a scooters altogether. Honda did not have the ideology that this could be further challenged and this could be done in a long manner altogether. So Honda, when they came up with their brilliant product called as Activa, they understood that they were going to be the market leaders in the coming years. But that was not true. Why? Because moment when Honda launched itself, TVS came into picture, the Suzuki came into picture, slowly Yamaha came into picture, TVS came into picture. Everybody started jumping into the bandwagon, including Hero Motors also. So now what is happening is that for Honda Activa, Honda Motors itself to stand by in the Indian market as a leader, they need to again understand the position and they need to get into a business research that could further strengthen their product, that could further lead them to a brilliant position. Now this is possible only when Honda understands where exactly they are standing today. They are not the leaders anymore, they are just one among the leaders. That's exactly the difference that you need to know when you are talking about the positional value in the market. So many a times, company might feel that or might find out saying that I am the leader in the market, I have enough customers, I have a greater acceptance in the market. But when you actually go by the ground rules, by the groundbreaking facts altogether, you try to understand that that's not the truth. You are somewhere in the middle of the path, or you're somewhere in the corner of the success story. So if you want to remain in the mainstream of success, if you believe yourself that you can do it better and you can reach for the best, that means you need to start getting into a research methodology. You need to start getting into a process that could make you fail-proof. So that is where the importance of research design comes into picture. It makes you understand analyze, and start building a step-by-step momentum towards success. The next thing is that researchers must keep their ultimate objectives in mind, even if it has to take a lot of challenge to move further. Now, many times what happens is that research is quite interesting when we talk about it. It is very much interesting when we hear about it, or it gets even more interesting when you see a visual display of it. But it gets really challenging, boring, or even sometimes impossible when you have to do it by yourself. Many times we want to go in the shortcut manner. We want to deviate from the path, and we want to do a research that is easy, that is convenient, and that is accessible to us. But that might not lead us to the path what exactly the customer is expecting from us. We might not get that exact result as expected. So that is why I say that researchers must keep their objectives in mind, not getting deviated from the factor that it is easy to do, so let me do that shortcut manner. No, that is not expected. The expectation is that you keep up to the level of the market, you keep up to the level of the standards that we are talking about, and then continue doing your research process so that you will see success in the short run. Going further, when we are talking about the choice of research design, which is affected by several factors, small and large, there are many factors that come into picture when we are talking about the research. It might be something related to people, to the process, or it might be related to the design factors altogether. So, but then these are the things that are affecting us in the long run. Then from research objectives to the search budget, and from time frame that has been changing, there are several factors that a researcher needs to understand and identify, and then only he can go further. You might have a brilliant research idea, but if the organization does not have that much amount of money to serve as a budget, as a purpose for that research, then unfortunately the research cannot be carried out. There might be reasons, or there might be situation where you might find that you have a great research, but you don't have a people or a process or technology supporting it. So ultimately you might have to change your research according to the need of the situation. So that's why I always say research is a collective process. Research is not an individual or an intellectual mind process. It's a collective exercise that makes you understand very clearly what are the objectives, how the objectives need to be met under each and every situation. Much of the choice is still based on the objectives of the research, which might be similar following the activity. So as the objective of the research, is it strong enough? That's why I say fundamentally when you are talking about research, you need to know exactly the direction in which you want to take it. Now, if you do not know the direction, you cannot have a Google map there trying to guide you every time. You need to have that map, you need to have that mind frame set very clearly that this is the intention of my research, this is the purpose of my research, and if I get the purpose exactly done, that means my research is completed. So every time in the organization, it is the formal duty of the researchers that they go further, they set the research process, they identify the objectives clearly, and then they let know the factors saying that this is what we exactly want. So that is why research design matters a lot for most of the companies. Moving further, let's try to talk about the objectives in terms of the research. Now, what are you going to gain out of the research process? The first thing is that you're going to gain an insight into the specific phenomenon, to conduct a broad exploration of a topic to gain a better knowledge in the field. Let me just give you the example of Samsung and LG. When these both electronic companies came into India, trying to bring in a complete change into the world of television altogether, people were completely flabbergasted. The people were completely taken aback altogether, because the way they defined TV, the way they started talking about the flat panel, the plasma, cinema, the LED, the OLED, the high definition, and all these kind of terminology. This is something that comes from a solid research, a solid background thought process altogether. Samsung and LG were not those kind of companies who just wanted to rush into the market, cover the market through sales, cover the heart of the people by just saying that we have a new set of products ready for you. But they were a company who spent a lot of time in research, in understanding what exactly the Indian consumers wanted. So the first objective which I would always like to say is that research makes you valuable in terms of knowledge. Research makes you individually think many a times that yes, this is what we want to do. So it makes you, it gains you that insight of the knowledge, the purview altogether, following which describing a phenomenon, population event where we can establish numerical relationships or to the extent to which the variables vary. So when I talk about consumer preference and price, so let me just write it down for you. When I use these two words, preference and that of price, there is some meaning. When I talk about preference versus price, there is some meaning, there is some logic behind it. So that's exactly what the research will help you to identify. Next, establish the cause and effect relationship between two variables to understand how one changes when we vary the other. So if I am going to take here a product like Cadbury's, a product like ITC Bingo, or a product like Nestle's Maggie, there is some factor where I am trying to talk about the relationship between fast food and that of consumer, or the relationship between the consumer's attitude and that of the buying behavior. So these kind of minute details can be understood when we start getting into the cause and the effective relationship altogether in terms of the variability. Next, there are three types of research. The first one is called as the exploratory research. The second one is called as the descriptive research. And the third one is called as the causal research. Let me just repeat. It is called the causal research. Now, the exploratory research, it is a lot of exploration or a detective work that is fueled by curiosity. So researchers will go into their instincts, use their ideology altogether. Probably I would like to say exploratory research is a freelance, is a free ground altogether, where the researcher will go as deep as possible in order to understand, in order to quench their thirst of knowledge. So they go into the venture in terms of trying to understand the deeper insights of why things are needed, why those factors matter a lot. Now there might be things which we might think as abstract, where we might go further and say that this is not at all needed. Why are people even thinking about it? But then from a research standpoint, especially from an exploratory research standpoint, this might be useful. This might be the one that they are looking for. So exploratory research is very, very important for those new ideas, for the innovations, for the out-of-the-box thinking altogether, because that will actually go further and help the people to understand what is going all together. So that is why I would always say it is mandatory for all of us to go through that thing, get yourself into the relevation, into the insights as far as possible. Now, the objectives here is very, very simple for an exploratory research: to define an ambiguous problem more precisely. So you are going to define an ambiguous problem. Why specifically, let's say our sales is declining, to gain a better understanding about an issue. So if there is some issue in the organization and you want to understand it, yes, this is the opportunity for you to generate new ideas, like what one can do to improve customer relationship. Now let's take WhatsApp here itself. We were talking about the privacy issue. So if you are working in the WhatsApp, you would like to do a research on how to develop the privacy of the customers in a better way. So that itself can be an exploratory research altogether. Similarly, develop hypothesis that can even explain the occurrence, why it is happening, when it is happening, why do we need to look into it, what are the different factors behind it, providing insights like what political changes, international changes changes. So primarily I'm talking about the pestle, that is political, economical, social, technology, legal, and the economic environment all together. So I can do a broad research combining all the factors under which the company is affected, and I could come up with an exploratory research here. And now when I talk about the descriptive research methodology, this is, as the name suggests, the description or describe the phenomenon or idea. It is generally used in the following method. The first one is that we are going to describe the traits of a group, like largest customer who account for more than 60% of the sales. So what I'm going to do is describe, give a complete description about what it is there in terms of that particular research. It might be about sales, it might be about HR, it might be about a benchmarking, a practice, it might be about the brand of the company, it might be even about saying why the company even exists. So I'm going to talk about a broad description of what the company is all about and what we are doing in the market for a survival basis altogether. So we are trying to describe ourselves, come out of the market altogether. Now the next thing is the covariance of variable, like the consumption of services might vary with the range of income. So again, I'm going to bring in two more factors like income, price, demand. Let me just describe these factors. Let me try telling you why these factors will matter. Now, to estimate the size of consumer group, so I'm just going to look into, how many times, for example, a newly married couple would like to go and shop. Now, I might try to act on a specific population related problem, like how many times a kid might like to go and buy a chocolate. So what I'm trying to do, I'm going to describe a particular thing and get into it. C for the predictions, forecasting how many times people switch on to new brands, use new software, new technology. So that is also a kind of a descriptive research, followed by the causal research. Now, word is very, very important. Causal, or the factor here, it's very, very important, which says that it's an effective in terms of identifying the covariation between the variables, but when it comes to identifying the causality, that's what it's happening. So causal research helps you to identify if there is any relationship between the variables. It is highly structured like the descriptive, and it is used for a specific purpose. So when I talk about the causal relationship, it is not going to be as simple as the exploratory. Why? Because in causal relationship, we are going to find out the relationship between two variables. It is going to be structured in nature. We have to understand under what relationship these variables are related and what is going to be the impact in the market using these particular variables. So the objectives can be in terms of manipulation, measurement. So manipulation like an individual variable like price, measuring the dependent variable like profit. So I'm going to see how profit is dependent on so many factors. I could even manipulate an agent like a price factor. So how do you manipulate price in order to achieve those profit? With this, I come to the conclusion of this particular session. I hope and believe that this session was of a great help and resource to you. In the upcoming sessions, we will be speaking more about the research designs and methodology in business. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.